So I just want to let you know, CDC just changed their recommendation. They used to, you have to be quarantined for 14 days if you get exposed to the virus. They just changed it. They halved it. 14 to 7, 7 to 10. New isolate. It's according to PBS NewsHour, the CDC isolation and quarantine guidelines confuse some and raise questions. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention recently edited its recommendations for people who may have been exposed to the virus. Instead of the standard 14-day quarantine it had recommended, the CDC says that suspected exposures should result in a quarantine of 10 or 7 days based on test results and symptoms. To the dismay of some authorities, the new guidelines allow people to leave isolation without getting tested to see if they're still infectious. I wonder why they would do that. Why would they change the rules like that? The guidance has raised questions about how it was crafted. I wonder. And why it was changed now in the middle of another wintertime spike in cases. This one driven largely by the highly contagious Omicron variant. The CDC has been under pressure from public and private sector. Oh, is this why they're changing it? Because the science didn't change. The science is exactly the same. Why are they changing it? Oh, they got pressure, including from Delta Airlines, to explore ways to shorten the isolation of quarantine time and reduce the risk of severe staffing shortages amid the Omicron surge. So businesses are leaning on the CDC to change the science, and they're doing it. And guess who's upset? Flight attendants are fuming. Flight attendants fume as CDC gives airlines what they want on quarantine change. So why would they be upset? Well, because now if someone gets sick, they're going to make them come back to work at 5 days instead of letting them stay home. That's why. A union for flight attendants is accusing the CDC of loosening rules for quarantine after COVID-19 exposure at the behest of the airline industry, as the Omicron variant continues to rage. Delta Airlines, the first to request the change to a 5-day quarantine period, also noted that current guidance was developed in 2020 when the pandemic was in different phase without effective vaccines and treatments. So that's what Delta Airlines was saying, because, you know, I always get my medical advice from Delta Airlines. For months, that outreach has cast a wide net from Congress to the executive office, the outreach from business, from airlines, and their outreach, meaning lobbying. So that lobbying has cast a wide net from Congress to the executive office of the president. According to publicly available disclosures, Airlines for America, so they represent everybody. They represent all the U.S. airlines. They also represent cargo giants such as FedEx and UPS. They reported that they also lobbied the CDC outreach. Executive office of the president, Congress, so they're all lobbying the government to change the COVID rules, not based on science, based on politics and economics. Earlier this year, UPS had lobbied Congress. Finally, they used the word lobbied. And federal agencies, including the Federal Aviation Administration, to exempt crew members from quarantine and testing requirements. Hawaiian Airlines and American Airlines also reported outreach to the executive office of the president, Congress, and federal agencies that host of issues that include quarantines. So again, they said it here, lobbied, but then they switched it to outreach again. Atlas Air Worldwide Holdings, which flies the bulk of Amazon's cargo, and the United Airlines also lobbied the House and the Senate. The updated CDC guidance shortened the recommended time for isolation for all people with asymptomatic cases of COVID, vaccinated or not, saying the change was motivated by science, demonstrating that the majority of SARS-CoV-2 transmissions occur early in the course of illness, generally in the 1 to 2 days prior to onset of symptoms and 2 to 3 days after that. Well, it's always been that way. So why are you changing it? Why are you changing your guidance? I thought it was all about science. It's not about science, you suckers. This is all about fucking money. Every part of this is. The agency also shortened the quarantine period for people exposed to COVID. Well, you know, since it's based on science, because, you're mostly infective only for a few days anyway. Louis Mansky, director of the Institute for Molecular Virology at the University of Minnesota, agreed there is a scientific basis for the CDC's recommendations. But other experts questioned why the CDC guidelines let people leave isolation without testing. It's frankly reckless to proceed like this, said Dr. Eric Topol, founder and director of the Scripps Research Translational Institute. Using a rapid test or some type of test to validate that the person isn't infectious is vital. There's no evidence, no data to support this. And that the CDC's doing it anyway, and I'm not allowed to contradict the CDC on YouTube because that's illegal on YouTube, because freedom of speech doesn't apply on YouTube. Freedom of corporate interests is what works on YouTube. So you're not allowed to tell the truth about that. So the CDC can lie all they want, which they have. Marshall Hatch, senior pastor of New Mount Pilgrim Church on Chicago's West Side, by the way, they are super pro-vaccine at that church. He said that he is bracing for some confusion in his congregation. Either we're in a surge that we need to take very seriously, or we are winding down the pandemic, and that's why we're shortening the isolation and quarantine times, he said Tuesday. They might want to give us a little more information to go with. We're in a surge. It's crazy. We're going to reduce this time. Oh, my God, everybody shit their pants over Omicron, but you can just go. You don't have to be tested. Go back to work. I'm getting mixed messages, and it's because this is all driven by economics and not science. From start to finish. Hatch said some members of the largely black congregation, particularly senior citizens, are skeptical of information from government. No kidding. I wonder why. Hey, we're doing live stand-up shows in Los Angeles on the 7th and 14th of January, and then we're going to be in Raleigh, North Carolina, and Philadelphia. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for all tickets.